Welcome, viewers and listeners, to another edition of CHP Talks. I'm here this week with an exciting guest from northern BC, Mr. Irwin Jeffrey, who is the CHP-BC candidate in the neighboring riding of Skeena. I'm running in Bulkley Valley-Stikine. Irwin is running in Skeena. Irwin, welcome to the program.
Hi, Rod. Thanks for the invite. Looking forward to it.
We're so pleased to have you serving with us and representing the values of the Christian Heritage Party in Skeena, which is, of course, part of our federal riding, extends over Skeena, but in provincial districts, Skeena and Bulkley Valley-Stikine are separate. So for those who do not know Irwin, he is married to Nancy for 17 years. Together, along with others, they lead worship at the Rock Church in Terrace, BC. We were privileged to be there a week ago at the Sunday service, and we really appreciated that. Irwin was born in Cassiar, BC, a town that no longer exists. So he considers himself a geo-orphan. And he's been an optician in Terrace, BC, since 1998. After becoming a lens grinder in Vancouver, and that was after studying philosophy at Simon Fraser University. And he makes some connections between the lens grinding and being an optician. I said that, like the Apostle Paul said in the King James Version, now we see through a glass darkly. But Irwin, as an optician, helps people see through their glasses more clearly. And
Clearly, yeah.
we will see absolutely clearly. And so with that, we will launch in. Irwin, again, thank you so much for joining us. I think when we chatted earlier, you had sort of not really a bio, but a bit of a story about your life and development. And maybe we could start with that. You could just tell us a bit about yourself, and then we'll go into some questions.
Sure. Before we say that, though, or before I recount this, let me just say something about the lens grinder comment you made, because I think of a philosopher back in the 17th century, a guy named Spinoza. And at that time, a lens grinder was a philosopher who was out of employment, and he had to find some other way to survive. So I've always joked that I'm a lens grinder's lens grinder. Nevertheless, I wrote this little piece for the local paper. They were asking for some background on who I am. It might be a little more creative than they were asking for, but let me just share this with you. I can recall my family telling me stories about driving the Alaska Highway while anxiously listening to intermittent radio reports regarding the rapidly escalating Cuban Missile Crisis. It is an apt depiction of the world into which I was born. Cassiar was a long way from the thrones of power, but being an asbestos mining town in the early 1960s, its days were indeed numbered, if for other reasons than nuclear Armageddon. With the family settling in Grand Isle, eventually, I learned to love the wilderness and the grandeur with which it is infused. My infinity with big ideas led me to study philosophy at SFU, and with the birth of my son, my desire to share my wilderness passion led me to move my family to Terrace in 1998. Out of necessity, employment soon became self-employment in my own optical dispensary, which I now manage in its current incarnation as an optometric clinic. My foray into politics began with working behind the scenes in a couple of federal elections for the People's Party of Canada. My current involvement is driven by conviction and a sense of urgency to oppose worrisome trends appearing in the political landscape. I am persuaded a more common sense or traditional approach, Christian approach to legislation in health, education, industry, indigenous issues, social discourse could save this province from the current government-induced descent into societal dissolution. Perhaps predictably, my political hero is Winston Churchill. the one who enlisted the English language and sent it off to war. He could see the dangers and suffered the ridicule of those who couldn't. He was a man of convictions, not polls or expediencies. Correlatively, I propose our freedoms and responsibilities are God-given, not merely permitted by government. They cannot be revoked if inconvenient. A healthy society requires a transparent and accountable government working on behalf of the people, including those in the womb, not one pandering to special interests and furthering suspect agendas. A fiscally conservative, morally responsible, nationalist, or patriotic government may not be the solution to all our ills, but it would be a start.
Absolutely. Great preamble to our discussion. Thank you for laying it out, some of the sort of the philosophical motivations that have drawn you into the political realm. And here we are now by the time this is posted on Thursday of this week, it will be just a couple more days until
Right.
voting day on Saturday, the 19th. And then we will see what comes of all this discussion that we are having in the province. You mentioned that you had been involved in a political campaign, but this is your first time out as a candidate. What
Yeah.
lessons would you say? I'm sure that you've taken a few kind of sudden course directions in the last couple of weeks, not in terms of your philosophy or policies, but just in terms of strategically bringing the message to the voters of Skeena riding. What lessons have you learned in the last couple of weeks, and what would you do possibly a little bit differently if you had more time to get your message out there?
Well, maybe I'll answer the second one first. If I had more time and more prepared to answer odd questions, um, and what I would have to say, what I've learned right off the bat, I mean, it's been kind of a roller coaster, sort of emotional roller coaster. I'm fairly comfortable talking in front of people, but big crowds, that's something new.
Mhm.
And you have to be kind of entertaining, but you also have to get your point across, of course. One of the things that I've learned right off the bat was I think of Christ when he says that you need to not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing.
Right.
So if I was watching myself go through this process, I wouldn't be doing it. So what I found is that you have to just plow ahead, not worry about the consequences, not worry about the repercussions, and you just have to stick to your guns, your convictions, which is what got me into this in the first place, was just the conviction um, that somebody has to do something. And, I can put things together, I can write, I can do that. And I just felt a real moving of the spirit that God was in this. In big picture, I think the CHP vote is really a conviction vote. It's something that um, you want to be on the right side in a sense. There's good maybe, and there's maybe not so evil, and then there's God. Whatever the consequences are, it's a principle vote, and you need to stand with your convictions here, especially if um, you have a fidelity to the sense you know that the world doesn't work like your faith indicates it should. God is not in this process very much, and so even if I've had people tell me, what are you doing here? I'm there because I have a faith in a transcendent God who wants people to know his will, what is the right way for politics to or for government to function in society.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think, Irwin, you said God isn't in this very much, and I think what you're saying is that in our regular political realm, whatever you might hear on evening news or whatever, God's influence isn't always that evident. Of course, we believe
yeah, that's
because we're
exactly
only
what I
seeing
mean.
through a
Yeah,
glass darkly. We believe,
yes,
anyway, that
right.
God is very much at work behind the scenes in all these
Yes,
political affairs. I'm sure you believe the same. But uh, our public in Canada, voting public, the citizenry, the taxpayers have not always made in recent decades, have not always made a direct connection between God's work and politics. So politics has gotten kind of a bad name, a bad rap, I guess. But you and I
well,
believe that
I
we need godly people who care, who tell the truth, who are transparent, and who are willing to make who to do and say things not because it's popular, but because it's right. And that is in politics very difficult to say things that or do things because it's right. And if you see a public reaction to it, if the public is not with you at the point of time of you making that statement, we can go back to William Wilberforce or Abraham Lincoln and the issue
right,
of slavery. At the
right.
time they were making their strong statements, their beliefs were not shared by the general public. They were outliers, as we are, I think, in many ways, on the issues, particularly of abortion and MAiD and
Yes,
some gender issues. We can't say that the majority of Canadians think exactly the way we think, but we think that the majority want the same things for their children. They just have kind of lost track. Many in our society and through the political realm, through the media influence, and maybe through the education system a bit, have lost track of the source of the kind of blessings that they want for themselves and their children. I don't know if you agree with that assessment, but certainly believe that our involvement is very much in line with what God would have us be doing as Christian citizens, even if it's grossly misunderstood by many of our fellow citizens.
yeah, for sure. I agree 100% with what you're saying. I'm not saying that God's not involved. God is
Yeah,
everywhere. It's just
yeah,
success is not measured uh, the same way. You
yeah.
know,
That
God
that's a
will
good.
have His way. There's no question He will
Yeah,
have His way. But there is an element where, well, I place before you life and death, and by that very fact, choose life, right?
yeah,
So I see our involvement in politics as witnessing uh, God's holiness, His holy otherness, His transcendence. And if all we compare, like if our conversation is just one with another, then we end up in really weird, funky places, which is where we are. We need to start as a population, I think, and entering into this is a sense of revival too. I mean, people becoming aware that God is inevitable, um, and God is real, and He really wants to. I feel be much more involved in people's lives, of course, even on a political level, because of the legislation that allows very anti-Christian, anti-life, anti-human policies to be established and instituted. So,
yeah. Well, there is that famous statement that God uh, owns every inch of this universe and every inch of our societal fabric. His will is not being properly manifested in
yeah,
much of it. so that we see things taking place even in high places or even in places that are generally accorded respect, let's say our universities or our halls of parliament, and we see things, laws being passed or statements being made that do not align with the perfect, loving will of our holy God. But that's where He calls us as believers to bring His perspective into every area of life, whether it's grinding lenses at an
Yeah.
optician's,
Well,
or the sawmills where I worked, or the railroad, any of those places, or into the political discussions that we're having, especially in these days.
yeah,
Um,
we ignore his commandments, if you like, to our peril.
exactly.
Um, and I think it's something Jordan Peterson said once, and I found this so encouraging. Um, Came across Jordan Peterson probably 2016, 2017, whatever it was. But he said, and I felt this, I thought this. I mean, a lot of Christians would have agreed with me at the time, but there in the heart of academia, you have somebody expressing this view that what we see in the world right now is not a political conflict. It's not even a philosophical war. What it is a battle to the death of incompatible theologies. That's
Wow.
exactly what's going on.
Hmm.
And so either God is real, God is transcendent, and we ignore his commandments, his will to our peril, or we just establish ourselves. And I mean, who was it? It was Dostoevsky said that if you banish God, everything is permitted. Um, and another thing that flows into that vacuum, if you banish God, it's not just that everything's permitted, it's something will take his place, and it's us.
Yeah.
And we're without a rudder. We're without any kind of orientation.
Yeah.
Nietzsche saw this in the end of the 19th century, and he predicted a bloodbath would occur in the 20th century because of how blithely people dismissed God. Now, he was an atheist, but he could see the way that things were developing in Western society, Western civilization. It was going to go bad because people, God is irrelevant. Well, he didn't take the concept of God lightly. He was an atheist, but he said this is the most serious concept, and we need to pay attention to this. And that was Nietzsche, right?
Yeah.
He
Wow.
was also a guy that said, that mankind couldn't allow such a witness to exist. Right? So I just find that very, very telling. I mean, this is coming out of a very serious atheist.
Hmm.
He has something to say to Christians, I think. But
In
that's
terms
getting
of
off
the
track a little bit.
Yeah, in terms of the shifting of political fortunes here in British Columbia, we certainly hope that they are shifting away from the NDP, which has run a top-down socialist, secular, humanist, confused, and debt-ridden government for the past 7 years. But
Right.
it's quite amazing to me that the playing field shifted so dramatically. And of course, things in politics, things can happen very fast and sometimes quite unexpectedly. But the former BC Liberals, now known as BC United,
Yep.
all of a sudden folded their tent and threw in the towel, and the BC Conservatives, who had been a very minor player in the past several elections, had not elected anybody for a number of elections. All of a sudden, they are the key opposition party to the entrenched NDP. That I think has made your job and my job a little tougher because so many voters are sick and tired of the NDP and of also of the weakened and left-leaning BC Liberals, which had become something similar to the NDP, not quite as extreme. And now they have what they're seeing, and the BC Conservatives, breath of fresh air. Now, there's still many of the BC Conservatives, including their leader, were former BC Liberals during a time when the BC Liberals allowed abortion to continue without restraint. They allowed the bubble zones to stay in place. They actually added transgenderism to the BC Human Rights Code. And that was while Mr. Rustad, the current leader of the BC Conservatives, was a BC Liberal. But anyway, now it seems like a lot of people are just seeing the BC Conservatives as a sudden answer to their plight. They want to get rid of the NDP in the worst sort of way. Maybe it's anyone except EB sort of thing. So do you think, I know this is the message we're giving out in Bulkley Valley-Stikine, where I am, and that the BC Conservatives, for those, you and I met, we and our wives were together at the recent prolife life chain in Terrace, and we attended, Elaine and I attended, as we always do, the life walk in Smithers the day before. And the issue of pro-life, the protection of innocent human life from conception and natural death, has been an overwhelming part of the motivation for us to be involved in this sometimes discouraging political scene. Do you think people have woken up to the dictatorial style of the NDP and the damage they've done to our economy, the healthcare system, the education system? Or, is that what's driving this urgency to dump the NDP, or is it something else?
I can only speak of what I see in town here, and what I see are a fair number of NDP signs on people's lawns. Now, and I pull back from that, and I think the NDP attracts political activists. Conservatives basically want to live and let live and just pay the mortgage and just live life. But the left seems to attract a certain type of people. So I think it's out of proportion of the actual popularity of the NDP in town here. It's been an NDP riding federally and provincially for a while. But I think there's no question to me that the Conservatives will win here. There's such, almost everybody that I talk to that voices their own opinion, I would say, they're very much against the NDP. Because Terrace is a safe injection site, for instance, and we see the effect, the consequences of these policies with the addicts that are falling down. Nobody's helping these people. This is not helping. And that's every day we see this.
So, this issue of life, obviously, we share with the Conservatives. There's a number of items that we're on the same page. Yes. In fact, some of them we've been talking about them before they have. We've been concerned about SOGI in the schools, and we've been talking about it and writing about it and speaking about it for many years. It was the BC Liberals actually that passed that into law. Of course, the NDP was delighted with it.
Right.
But when it comes to the issue of life, protection of innocent human life, the Christian Heritage Party of BC is the only party that is making any statement about defending preborn life in the womb. And even I have not heard very much spoken by John Rustad or any of the Conservatives about the increasing and alarming use of MAiD, doctor-assisted suicide, to end lives. Like right now in British Columbia, 5%, 1 in every 20 persons who dies in British Columbia dies from a doctor-injected suicide or a doctor implemented death protocol of some sort. So I guess my question, since we are the only ones, and I think last time we had numbers, there were about 15,000 babies killed in British Columbia every year by abortion. Now the NDP government has refused to give out numbers for many years, so we can only guess about some of these numbers. But since they're proud of killing the unborn, the helpless and defenseless, innocent preborn, you'd think that they would want to talk about the numbers, but that's not something that they're keen about. What will it take? I guess this is the question I'm getting to. What will it take to awaken voters and citizens to the terrible tragedy of the killing of 15,000 babies in British Columbia every year, and the cover up that is a flimsy cover up, but just blaming it on so-called choice, and really that's, or anyway, I'll leave it. What's it going to take to wake people up?
Okay, let me just say it really, I mean, that's a euphemism, right? It really should be called pro-death.
Yeah.
And what I would say to this is that during the chain of life, when we're standing there at Ferry Island with talking, and we're having holding our signs and whatnot, I was really encouraged with how much positive reaction. So I see a change there. People are becoming more aware, just as you're saying. And I think that's the distinction, or what makes the CHP a really distinctive choice, is precisely what you're talking about. And again, it would be a choice for the CHP is a choice that is really based on very strong convictions, and this is the way that I see it, is as being kind of a prophetic thing, because we're involved in offering people a choice that allows them not to align with the principalities and powers and rulers that rule this present darkness. It allows people that option for their own conscience to be pure, right? In a sense that their vote is completely aligned with their faith. Um, and yeah, I see this again as really, like there's maybe the conservatives are kind of like a good option, the NDP not so good option, but then the CHP is, like, in a sense, in a very real way, a God option, because there's a essential part. I mean, what's happening in our society right now. I mean, in Canada, as you've mentioned, I'm sure, in other podcasts, we have no abortion laws. I mean, right up to the moment of birth, practically.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know if this is going to help with answer your question, but I remember when I was at SFU, there were some anti-abortion, pro-life people uh, going around, and they had a film, and so I watched the film, and it was an ultrasound of a baby being aborted. And the baby was sentient enough to know that it was in trouble, but it had nowhere to go. I mean, the image was just burned into my mind. And if people could see this, of course, there's a gag order on this sort of thing. It's suppressed out of the social consciousness. But if people realized what was going on, or what is going on in an abortion, I think of what's her name, Amy Johnson, who was involved with
Abby Johnson.
Abby, exactly. She was involved in that for years until she actually saw what it was all about.
Yeah.
And that film, I think, has helped produce some of the response that we saw at the Chain of Life protest.
Yeah.
So it's just you have to circumvent the cancel culture, and get the information out about what it actually is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, like the movie you're referring to, the original one, The Silent Scream, I think is what it's called.
Yes, yeah, it was
And
a silent
it showed a baby in the womb about to undergo an abortion, and it was moving away from the pain,
Yes.
powerful. Like
Yeah.
it was sensing pain. It was trying to escape. As you said, it
Yes.
had no place to
And
go.
it had nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess one of the challenges I know I'm, facing a challenge here in Bulkley Valley-Stikine, and I presume the same in your area. For the for the conservative supporters out there who want desperately to put John Rustad in the premier's office and to banish the NDP to a minor player in this province, I have good news for you. If your people can win, and there's 91 ridings in British Columbia where we do not have a CHP candidate, where we do not have a CHP candidate standing up for life and family, for the protection of innocent human life from
Right.
beginning to end. But there are two ridings in the north here, Bulkley Valley-Stikine and in Skeena, where we do have a pro-life candidate that will represent you. Now, my opinion and what I've expressed many times to voters and people who are on the fence how they're going to vote. They would like to vote for me, but they're afraid they're going to get the NDP back, so that then they say, well, I better vote conservative just to get the NDP out. But they're ignoring something really important, and I'll just point it out again in this broadcast. Um, as long as we, the voters of British Columbia, the voters of Canada, as long as we tolerate the shedding of innocent human blood, we cannot expect God's blessing on our province or on our country. Um, I know we have put our shoulder to the wheel many years ago. I've been on the Smithers Pro-Life Society here on the board for over 30 years. And it is a constant dedication for us, as well as through the Christian Heritage Party of Canada, Christian Heritage Party of British Columbia. But we are doing what we can to raise awareness of the tragedy of the shedding of innocent blood. But as long as we, the voters of our province, choose a government that does not care about the shedding of innocent blood, that does not care about the killing of 15,000 babies a year in British Columbia, we simply cannot expect God's blessing on our province, on our nation. And it's true across the board. The other provinces are in the same boat. Canada is in the same boat. The Federal Conservative Party has chosen Pierre Poilievre to lead them, and he's an aggressive leader. He's very quick on his feet. He's articulate. He understands the economics and all that. Many good qualities. However, he supports the killing of the innocent preborn, and he supports the, sort of the destruction of marriage through definition, allowing other forms of interactions to be considered a marriage besides just a man and a woman. And on those two bases, to me, we do not access the blessings of God if we tolerate the shedding of innocent blood. So that's what we're bringing to the people here. They have the opportunity in Skeena and in Bulkley Valley-Stikine to vote for life, family, and freedom. And I'm so grateful, Irwin, that you are representing those values in Skeena.
Somebody had to, man.
Thank you.
No, these are big issues, and we just touched on a couple of them, really. They need to be opposed. And the abortion issue is a very, very important one. In fact, pivotal, as you're indicating there. And as a country, we need to have this conversation, because having a biblical perspective on it, I mean, you can't help but think, this is kind of like the extension of the sorts of things that the Canaanites were doing with Moloch and whatnot. Birth control or abortion as birth control. I mean, this is travesty. This is an abomination.
Yeah.
And how how much longer you could think in this context, but just the very fact that again that image of the film I saw, the silent scream, I think was what it was. You were quite right. Um, it motivates you. You know, you need to align yourself with what would prevent that from happening because the child had nowhere to go and it was sentient. It knew it was in trouble. Um, that in itself ought to give us pause, ought to stop us in our tracks. You know, what are we doing as a society?
Yeah.
So even facing or enduring the ridicule or the backlash for proposing these sorts of things, what does it matter, right? We need to, as Wilberforce did for 20 years. He opposed the slave trade, and he would have had ups and downs and lots of
Yeah.
disappointment, but eventually the truth won out, and England was the first country in world history to end slavery. And with the power of the British Navy, they spent 2% of their GOP trying to prevent that trade from continuing with other countries. So, in that one guy,
It,
God pivoted
yeah.
the world, right?
He's a great model, a great example for us. I thought we might go a little further in talking about SOGI and some of those things, which is also a travesty. I think we probably should wind it up here pretty quickly, but
Okay.
well, I will just ask you about that. School, SOGI, sexual orientation, gender identity. In talking to the voters in Skeena, how many people do you think are aware of SOGI? If you say the word, the acronym SOGI, do people know what you're talking about? And are they aware of the NDP's push for early, promiscuous, and unnatural sex, even in the schools, for more gender confusion and for taxpayer-funded gender reassignment, even of minors, through puberty blockers, hormones, and surgery? On
Yeah.
a, I don't know, just give me a rough guess. How aware do you think the
Yeah.
population of Skeena is on that issue?
Yeah, I would think most parents and grandparents are aware of SOGI, and I would think the same amount would see in SOGI more problems than it could ever solve. And I'm sure they hear reports of kids being taken away from their parents because the parents aren't affirming the confusion, as if it's a compassionate thing to normalize dysphoria.
Hmm.
These people, again, like the addicts, they're not being helped.
Yeah.
Um, Dysphoria is a real thing, especially when kids are 12, 13, 14 years old. And with the NDP and the SOGI program, I mean, right there where they're getting really kind of confused about stuff and they're just trying to figure things out, bam, they get hit with policies. And sure, it's not part of the curriculum, but that's just a red herring because it's really in the classrooms and people are getting hurt.
Yeah.
People are getting mutilated. I don't know the figures on how prevalent it is, but in the books, yeah, the government, the state can step in. The state is not the parent. And yet,
Yeah.
with the NDP, they presume almost
Yeah.
obsessively to be so, and without any wishes of the parents, like they would take the kids away if the kids are convinced that somehow they're not the reality that they were born.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, um gender identity is just kind of that in a sense. It's nothing real. It's construction. It's a composite. And you can imagine anything you want. You can live by, most people do live by fictions, and it's self-flattering. Maybe the kid's a little bit awkward in school, and the reason I'm awkward is because, well, I'm really this.
Yeah.
Well, the child's not getting the help they need. And SOGI is just in a sense, you could say it's a mind virus. You know, it's not helping these people that are really
Yeah.
afflicted with dysphoria.
In our debate here, the NDP MLA, Mr. Nathan Cullen, uh, tried to say that I was, insulting teachers to accuse them of pushing this stuff on the children. I said I don't blame the teachers as such. There are some, but I know a teacher in Vancouver area who very much agrees with me on all the things that are important. He works with some special needs children there, and he is being told by the administrators, and ultimately it comes from Victoria, that they have to push this agenda. And he's very uncomfortable with it, but
Yeah.
he's being forced to push an agenda that he doesn't agree with. So I don't blame the teachers. I blame the NDP hierarchy in Victoria, David Eby and his close cabinet, for pushing an agenda that is harmful to children. So we, I'll just say here, those who attended our debate would have heard me say this, but one of the things we would do is defund abortion, medical assisted suicide, doctor assisted suicide, and gender reassignment, whether it is, especially for children, whether it is in hormones, puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, or surgery. That's all money being not only wasted. If it were only being wasted, we might be able to overlook it. It's being used to harm people. Abortion
Yes.
kills people. MAiD kills
100%.
people. And
100%.
many of these young people that are transitioning are now wanting to detransition, and of
Yep.
course they cannot get back to where they were. Many of them will never be able to have children, never be able to have a proper relationship,
Yep.
and they're very sad about it. And some of them do commit suicide. So their program of abortion, doctor-assisted suicide, and gender reassignment is a culture of death. It's a program of death, and we would put an end to it. We would use those tax dollars for actual health care, not for these destructive practices. So, Irwin, we're
sure.
going to close off here.
Okay.
How can people get a hold of you, either through email, or how can they contribute to your campaign? I guess the last day to properly contribute to the BC provincial campaign would be this Saturday, October the 19th. But how can people give to your campaign or contact you?
Well, the best way would be email, and the email would be irjeff.chp@gmail.com. Otherwise, let me spell it out for you. irjeff.chp@gmail.com.
And they could make, if they wanted to contact you, that would work. Or if they
That would work too. Yep.
an e-transfer to your campaign account, it would work at that same email address.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wonderful. And folks who may or may not know about how that works, the maximum contribution to a campaign or to the party on an annual basis is $1,450. And
10 cents.
we've been grateful for the contributions that have come to my campaign, and also for Irwin's.
Yes.
If you'd like to help him in his campaign in any way, contact him and consider giving him an e-transfer before Saturday night this coming weekend. Folks, don't forget to vote. If you live in
Absolutely.
Skeena or Bulkley Valley-Stikine, don't forget to vote. The advanced polls are open now, and well, when we're recording this, but they'll be closed by the time this is posted on Thursday. But voting day is Saturday, October 19th. Get out and vote for life, family, and freedom. And in Skeena, vote for Irwin Jeffrey.
And in Bulkley Valley, vote for Rod.
Thanks.
Vote But yeah, I would just like to say, vote your conviction. You've got one vote. Vote your conviction.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Irwin, thanks for taking the time to be with us. I know you're a busy guy. You're still doing your regular work as well as running this campaign. And I
Right.
thank you for letting your name be on the ballot and giving people a place to vote for life, family, and freedom. Thanks so much.
Excellent. Thanks. Thanks, Rod. Good night.
Good night.